Day 2 of testimony on Capitol Hill for U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. He'll be in front of the Ways and Means Committee today answering questions about President Trump's tariffs. Joining us now, Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith. Is he gonna? It was yesterday. He got some pushback and some tough questions. Is it coming from both sides of the aisle, Mr. Chairman?
I would expect, Joe, that today in the House Ways and Means Committee, he'll have some tough questions as well from both sides. This is the opportunity for the administration to plead their case in regards to their trade policy. So Jamison's in the middle of everything, and he'll be able to answer to members of Congress today.
I don't know if you saw Congressman Bacon and Gottheimer on. There's no way you get to a two-thirds. I can't see that happening. But is there some angst and uneasiness in the ranks, the Republican ranks, for what's happening in the stock market or the way that the tariff issue is being litigated?
Well, this is definitely uncharted water, especially since the 4 years you saw the prior administration out to lunch when it came to trade policy. They did absolutely nothing. And so that is causing some uncertainty. But the only thing that the prior administration virtually kept intact of the Trump presidency in his first term was his China tariffs. That was literally the only thing that they reaffirmed. Now, when you look at what the president's trying to do, he's doing exactly what he campaigned on. He campaigned on delivering these tariffs. It was no secret about it, so no one should be surprised. He says countries have been taking advantage of the United States for a long time, and they have been. I would disagree with my colleagues that you were talking with earlier. They were talking about we should make sure that the European Union is straightened out and we don't address it. The European Union is the reason why we have an agriculture trade deficit in America. We have a $32 billion agriculture trade deficit with the European Union, and we have a $32 billion agriculture deficit in the world. That is unacceptable. But why is that, Joe? Why is that? Honduras purchases more pork from us, a country of 10 million people, than the entire European Union of 450 people. Angola purchases more chicken from us than the entire European Union, and they have a GDP 200% less. 200% less than the European Union. Give me a break.
We had a mini brouhaha yesterday between a couple of the presidents. I don't know what you'd call them. One's a kind of a non-official part of the administration, Elon Musk, and then you've got a trade advisor, Peter Navarro. But it does sort of highlight what we've seen. The president getting buffeted between two camps, it seems like. And depending on which camp seems to be in favor, the stock market goes one way or the other. When we talk negotiations, we have 70, Scott Bessent was on yesterday, the Treasury Secretary. When he mentioned that, market happy, up 1,400 points. Immediately when we hear no negotiations or the Navarro side of things, we get back into what is actually fairly troubling for a lot of Americans. Congressman, Mr. Chairman, and about 2 years from now, what would happen too if we continue down this path? Does it concern you in terms of what's going to happen in the midterms?
Joe, first off, there's always family feuds. In every family, in every business, there's disagreements. That happens quite often. What I'm excited about is the president. The president is a negotiator. He has served his entire life negotiating. And so for people to not believe that the president of the United States is going to negotiate with all these countries, I got some oceanfront property in Missouri to sell them. He is absolutely negotiating. He is thrilled that 70 different countries has came forward.
The negotiation can't help when we hear that, but then a lot of times hopes are then dashed a half hour later by a tweet from the president or by comments from the other faction. Can I ask you about yeah, go ahead.
So, Joe, what I will say is that a lot of people get distracted because the president talks about all the revenues that's going to come from the tariffs. He's talking about the revenue that's going to come from the tariffs of the countries that's not willing to negotiate. That's where the revenue tariff's going to come. The countries that then come in and treat us fairly, then we're going to make an agreement.
You mean that, so we have tariffs on them, and then when the imports come in, it's people here that are paying the tariffs, aren't they? Mr. Chairman, what do you mean the countries are paying the tariff?
The people here also pay by losing their jobs in rural America when those factories close because of unfair trade practices.
But who's paying the actual tariff? The money that the president always says he's collecting, where's he getting that? The countries aren't paying that to the Treasury.
It's the producers in those countries that's trying to sell to U.S. consumers that is having a less of an income that's coming from it. What we do know, what we do know without a doubt is that this president is much more focused on Main Street than he is on Wall Street. He has said that time and time again. He is fighting for those people who have been overlooked for such a long time.
Mr. Chairman, Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary, is saying at this point that he expects you could see 2 million job losses because of the downturn and potential recession being caused by these tariffs at this point.
I think he's completely wrong. In fact, there's been more than $1.5 trillion of new investment from private companies that's planning to come into the United States to invest in new manufacturing. I think, in fact, there will be millions of new jobs instead of less jobs, because the tariff policies have worked for every other country in the world. They'll work for us. They were very successful in the early 1900s. We saw that before we even had a federal income tax. They will work in protecting the American worker, manufacturer, and farmer.
Mr. Chairman, the big editorial piece today about whether the House is going to be able to pass that Senate budget outline to get to reconciliation. We know how narrow the margin is that Speaker Johnson's working with. Journal points out that the spending cuts, once you get into reconciliation, that's where you could get, do the down and dirty hard work. And to scuttle it before you get there makes no sense at this point. Do you think Speaker Johnson's going to be able to get the votes to pass this?
Failure is not an option, Joe. We will absolutely get the votes. We got the votes in the first time around. Now it's our time to act again. We will not allow the largest tax increase in the history of America to be on our watch. Tax cuts, deregulation are all part of the process of what the president is wanting to do, along with tariffs. And we will deliver on these tax cuts.
Do you think
Chairman Smith, can you just...
Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
I just wanted to jump in because you made this historical reference, and I just want to go back to 1930, and maybe you can explain to the audience what you think therefore happened in 1930. So in 1930, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs were put into effect. We should mention 1,000 economists wrote a letter to President Hoover at the time saying, please, please, please do not allow this to happen. 12 months later, global trade dropped by 60%. So can you explain what happened there and why what's happening now, which, by the way, the tariffs would be higher, is somehow different?
A lot happened in the 1930s other than just tariffs to look at. At that time, we also had a new federal income tax. But what I was referring to in the early 1900s was during President McKinley and President Roosevelt's time, whenever tariffs is what exactly funded government. It's two totally different situations from 1930 to the early 1900s. But what I am saying is that I represent a congressional district where I travel all over our 28 counties, and I see the empty factories that have happened, and my people do not have jobs, and they have unfortunately paid the price for unfair trade practices of other countries. We're just trying to make sure that we are treated fairly. If the American worker and farmer is treated the same, we will be successful.